Hi, this is Gurasi Singh, and you're listening to my Thick Accent podcast. So, gone are the days when there were only a handful of career options to choose from. Or, in other words, Asian parents want their children to become professionals such as lawyer, doctor, or an engineer. They believe that this is the right approach to life, work, and everything. Anything contrary to it will be uncomfortable to them because it will undermine their world view. Well, I believe, and I'm sure my listeners do too, that children do have the right to choose their own career path. And it's high time parents understand that education is a mean to enhance the right skill they need in the society, but not to force to be something they do not want to, and my guest today will agree to it as well. He moved to Canada as a permanent resident. Before moving, he has worked as an editor, a reporter for IndianTelevision.com, also in corporate communication to international business development for Red Chillies, which did give him the opportunity to travel around the world. And in 2017, he decided to leave his established career and start anew in a new country. Let's learn more from him about his inspiring journey of resilience, determination, and the pursuit of happiness, or how he likes to call it, the pursuit of Canadian dream. Please welcome Sidharth Iyer.
Hey, thank you, Gurasis, and happy to be on your podcast. Been seeing some good stuff on LinkedIn on the same, so yeah, it was happy. I mean, it was a good thing to connect, and here we are.
Awesome, perfect. Welcome, and happy to have you on the podcast. So, Siddharth, this is the first recording of the year 2023 that I'm doing. And like from past 2 years, I come up with a word or a phrase to inspire my new year and also to keep as a reminder as the year passes on. So this year, I chose the word celebrate because we do have that toxic tendency to just move on to the next thing immediately rather than, enjoying it, living in that moment, enjoying that victory. So I'd like to ask you the same question. Is there any word or a phrase that you would like to keep as a reminder for yourself for the new year?
Yeah, I mean, that's actually a very fascinating question. So, I mean, for me, I think for the last 5 years and probably even for the last 10 years that I've been a working professional now, like my word or the go-to word for me has always been to evolve and
Hmm.
just like be a better version of yourself from the previous day. So yeah, just that mindset has helped me reach where I am today.
Awesome. I love that. So before we talk more about your interest in learning new things and evolving, so I want to take you back to the time that you spent in India. So you were born in Jamshedpur and eventually you moved to Mumbai and also lived in Singapore for 2 years. So tell us more about your formative years of your life and also what the focus was on growing up.
Yeah, I mean, like any, I would say, normal Indian kid, had a good growing up experience. Like just made a lot of friends. I mean, got to explore different cities because of, I mean, either sort of family situations or my dad getting like new
Hmm.
opportunities on the work front. So yeah, like you said, so I was born in Jamshedpur. Then we moved to Mumbai because that was like our sort of karma bhumi, as you call it, like the place where you work. So yeah, that's where dad was kind of just having a great career, and so all of us were there. And then in between, of course, because of that sort of great career that dad was on, so we got an opportunity to sort of move to Singapore for a couple of
Hmm.
years. And I mean, yeah, that was the sort of question that they were facing, right? Like, should it be like the more of the Tare Zameen Par or Rockford movement, or should it like okay, let's take the kids along with us? So yeah,
Hmm.
they chose to take us along, and I believe still do that those were probably the best sort of years in terms of getting that international exposure early in life, like
Hmm.
looking at the cultural differences that we have, even though like we are part of Asia. Like the sort of just the way of life is so different in Singapore, and everything is very sort of coordinated. Like the legal system is amazing, and I mean, we were always joking around like it's kind of brighter in the night than it's in the day. So so like you never have to fear like when you're stepping out of the house what time it is and stuff like that. So
Mhm.
yeah, I mean all those things were like very positive to begin with. And then of course like since that work commitment sort of wrapped up in a couple of years, we moved back to India in the millennium, and that's when like we were again facing that choice of whether we stay in Mumbai or like explore another city. And the reason we chose to go back to Jamshedpur was because we could sort of get into like a ICSE sort of board, and then additionally also like not have to kind of go back to Marathi again, and sort of pick up the
Mhm.
Hindi language. So yeah, I mean, and that kind of also proved to be a great move, because I would say that really helped me sort of hone my language skills as well in English, and additionally sort of just bring more confidence in terms of the decisions that I was making in life going forward. And even though of course after coming back, I mean after doing my sort of 10th or matriculate as we call it in India,
Mhm.
we I mean moved back to Mumbai, did my sort of bachelor's in commerce, and after doing bachelor's in commerce, I got an opportunity to do like a, what do you call it, it's almost like a crash course that most of your cat and sort of zat entrance exams,
Okay.
the sort of education centers that train you in that. So I managed to kind of top a competition in that, so I came into the top 3. And so their promise was like, if you clear cat, zat, or snap, which was the symbiosis
Yeah.
thing, and if you make it to a B school, then your fees are waived. So otherwise only then you have to pay your fees. But funny enough, yeah, I mean, so I cracked that, and then after that I did get into like symbiosis in
Mhm.
SIM for a course in masters in mass communications and journalism. And yeah, again, that I would say would have been a great training ground for me, just to sort of again like think of what I want to do in my career. And even I would say even during my Jamshedpur days or when I was in Bombay, I always had the inclination of kind of getting into a career that leverages either my writing capabilities or my speaking capabilities. And the sort of career paths that I would see ahead of me were maybe like getting into law, maybe getting into like
Yeah.
some sort of social kind of environment, or eventually sort of even journalism kind of came to be. And yeah, so during my journey at Symbiosis, I think it became very clear that journalism was what I wanted to kind of get into. And funny enough, I wanted to specialize in sports journalism, and also got the opportunity to actually intern at ESPN Star Sports. And
Mhm.
I did a couple of sort of commentary gigs as well on a couple of test matches that India and England were playing.
Oh
And
wow.
that, yeah, that was a great experience, just uh, because the way radio commentary works versus what you see on television is very different.
Mhm.
Because I mean, in television of
Mm.
course you have your commercials and sort of breaks in
Yeah.
innings and stuff, whereas radio you sort of need to keep going, like so we had like couple of sets of commentators who used to kind of do 15-minute sessions. And
Mhm.
you need to kind of have a knowledge of the game to kind of continuing to speak even when the players are sort of switching ends or kind of taking a drinks break and stuff. So that was interesting to sort of really kind of pick up on the interesting factoids on players, maybe the venue, maybe something that's happening in the series. So
Mhm.
it kind of also honed my research capabilities, I would say, during that stint. And yeah, I mean after that I also kind of interned at CNN IBN in Mumbai, which was primarily like the entertainment hub, you could say. So I was in the mix when like the Wankhede incident happened with Shahrukh, and also like
Mm.
quite a few movie launches and premieres, and just covering a lot of that stuff. And then funny enough, so I don't know if you are aware, so there's this amazing comedian, Cyrus Brocha. So
Yeah, I'm aware. Yeah.
who of course became famous with more of the MTV sort of stuff
Yeah.
with Bakra, but he also used to produce a show for CNN IBN called The Week That Was, and it's kind
Hmm.
of the longest running sort of satire take on like politics, entertainment,
Okay.
sports, everything in India. And so yeah, I mean, it was fun to kind of work with their team as well in terms of supporting them with the scripting, the production,
Hmm.
uh, transcripting, all of that stuff. And then eventually got to do like couple of even like citizen journalist sort of shows at CNN IBN. So it kind of opened me up to the broadcast side of things as well. And
Hmm.
at ESPN it was more the digital and sort of audio format. And I mean, given just my nature, I sort of leaned more towards the digital and audio format versus
Hmm.
video, even though I mean, kudos, and I mean, uh, I would say great courage it takes to be on video, and sort
Yeah.
of do it day in and day out, like be presentable. And as you can see, like being presentable is the last thing on my mind. But
I don't believe that. Okay.
but yeah, I would say those were probably the days that led me to kind of being more confident and also be assured that yeah, I mean, journalism is probably where I see myself kind of becoming a professional.
So that's why I remember you telling me that you did your bachelor's in commerce, but then did your master's in journalism and mass comm. So that was how you found your career path.
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely say
Yeah.
that. And funny incident also, while I was making that switch and while I was like giving all the entrance exams and stuff,
Hmm.
of course, like my folks were like having still no clue like what is this guy going to end up doing, because
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I would say I have always been a bright individual or a bright student, but
Hmm.
it's just that I was lazy. Like I would not really do the hard work to kind of earn the grades or like be on point on things and stuff. Like anything that is more practical in nature is what sort of excited me rather than the theoretical aspect. So anything, so physics, right? Like
Hmm.
I used to be like good in physics, I would say, like really good in physics, versus if you put
Hmm.
me in like biology or chemistry, I would say like still kind of you can make it a little practical, but physics
Hmm.
is something that I really like resonated with. And similarly, I would say then of course that decision comes in life where you have to take either science, commerce,
Medical,
or
non-medical,
yeah,
commerce. Yeah.
yeah, or if you're apparently if you're useless, then you go into arts. So but and especially if you're a guy, I mean, but yeah, those I think the days have gone by now. Like
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think the generation today has a lot more to choose from. Like folks can even specialize in like doing economics even if they are doing arts and stuff.
Yeah.
So like all of that has really opened up now, and which is great for like just the sort of education system and like the upcoming generations as well. But yeah, like you said, those were definitely some interesting times to choose that career path for journalism.
Yeah. I feel like maybe when you got into journalism, mass comm, it was something very new for the parents, right? There was no like an example to follow. Maybe not in the family, and that's why they kind of get worried that what's going to happen after this particular program. Nobody knows about it. Since you did mention that you work for, as a reporter, as an editor, as a journalist, and then you also got the opportunity to work with Red Chillies, which is Shah Rukh's company. And for the listeners who don't know Shah Rukh, he's the biggest star of Indian cinema. So tell me, how did you join that role? How did you got that opportunity? And I remember you telling me that you joined it as a corporate communication person, and then you end up doing the international business development. Tell us about the transition as well, and how did you get this role?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, yeah, while I was heading Animation Express, which was kind of a sister company for Indian Television.com,
Hmm.
and I sort of started from scratch in a way because like the team there had completely sort of I would say disappeared in a way, and so I was like again employee number one in a way, and then it was on me to sort of really understand and then kind of emulate what is going on in the industry. So
Mhm.
I mean, coming from a background of like doing sports journalism, then doing some business in terms of like the business of content, right? So I used to write about like how content syndication used to work. I used to write about like IP acquisitions, all of that stuff, which also led me to kind of exploring international markets like Cannes. So there's an event that takes place called MIPCOM and MIPTV and
Mhm.
MIPDocs, where like various formats are like sort of purchased and sold and all of that stuff. So after kind of taking on Animation Express, my first line of duty was to kind of actually speak with like founders of animation studios, gaming studios, VFX studios, and sort of understand like what are some of the pain points that they are seeing. What is it that is keeping like Indian animation or Indian VFX to kind of really blow out of proportion on like
Mhm.
the global scale? And additionally, like always, like there was challenge around like talent training, whether the students that are actually going to all these sort of training institutes like Arena and Mac, are they really sort of equipped to kind of come into a studio and directly start working on projects, or do they really need to kind of hone that sort of foundational skills in a way? So those sort of pain points is what I got to learn about. And then I started doing like executive dossiers of these sort of CEOs and founders, and that led me to kind of becoming almost like uh, I would say like the fourth pillar for the VFX and animation industry,
Mhm.
wherein they sort of reached out on their own in terms of talking about like new projects coming up, or if they are probably planning to do like a hiring drive, all of these things. So it kind of almost became like a very organic connection with the industry. And then of course, as we kind of progressed and evolved as a organization at Animation Express, we actually floated like a creative arm of this, which was called like the Graphic Slate. And
Okay.
the intention behind starting the Graphic Slate was we cover the creative aspect of the industry, because there is so much of talent, there are so many creative professionals that don't kind of get a platform to really showcase their work and showcase like what actually goes behind the scenes of creating a movie like Bahubali or Krish
Mhm.
3 or all those sort of bigger than life sort of experiences.
Exactly. Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, so that was again where we got really close with the industry and things. And then eventually things sort of didn't work out for me at Animation Express and Graphic Slate. And then I was like at that point where I was like, okay, let me take a break, I'll figure things out like what to do next and stuff.
Okay.
And so I just sent in kind of uh, like thank you email to like the industry, so
Mhm.
all the folks that I was dealing with and stuff. And that's where like interestingly after that I sort of just went to Jamshedpur for like I think the winter break, because it was like Christmas time and New Year's time.
Mhm.
So I was like, okay, I'll celebrate the New Year there, like, and then come back refreshed. And then while I was there, I was getting all these feelers from a few folks. So like Green Gold Animation, which is like the creator of Chota Beam, like the founder there,
Mhm.
Rajiv Chilaka, he also was very fond of like the work that I was doing. And then you had Maya Studios, which are the creators of sort of Kisna and a couple of other IPs in animation. But
Mhm.
funny enough, like it's founded by Ketan Mehta, the director of like movies like Mangal Pandey and
Okay.
Manji the Mountain Man. And yeah, so uh, that was another opportunity that was also there, mostly again in the communications and content sort of side. And then like the founders of Red Chillies, or the co-founders with Shahrukh, like Ketan and Harry, they sort of also reached out. And because I'd done a story of their recent venture, and I think it was Happy New Year. Like we did a VFX making of Happy New Year, and
Mhm.
so yeah, I mean they remembered that, and they were like, okay, like if you want to explore, like let's at least connect and figure out things. And so yeah, when I went across and I met with them, so that's where Red Chilies sort of happened. So I would say it was
Mm.
definitely more of the network influence rather than like actually applying for an opportunity. But yeah, that's how that role came to be. And then
Mhm.
of course they wanted me to sort of come in and lead or head sort of corporate communication, so
Mhm.
like head of PR or something like that was what
Yeah.
they were planning as a designation. Like I was the one who chose like the designation of lead digital strategist, because as always in the mindset of like, I mean, once you become like a head, then it's almost like you are leading a specific function, and then you're also like forming a team. But I knew that this is going to be more of an individual contributor role,
Mhm.
and eventually it's going to be a lot of cross overlap with like all the different teams. So I was working with like the artists in terms of creating a lot of the before afters which we could showcase at various events and like also put up on our YouTube channel and stuff. I was working with like our business kind of teams in terms of better understanding like what is the industry sort of evolving towards, like what are the new things that are coming up, if there are any new technologies that like we are planning to explore. And that's where like a lot of the new technologies came to be, with the
Mhm.
making of like fan and even like zero going forward. And yeah, I mean, then it came to be that okay, like now that we've sort of established ourselves as like a the biggest probably Indian studio,
Yeah.
like why not explore like international markets. And that's
Mhm.
where we started applying for like speaking opportunities to begin with. And funny enough, like all the sort of events that we went to were completely sort of taken care of by the event organizers themselves. So that was another sort of I would say positive that they looked at, right? Like it's not going to be an expense on our end, but it sort of becomes more of an investment even when we are going there and sort of speaking about the work that we do and probably form like relationships that could lead to some business exchanges. So yeah, I mean, that was interesting just to sort of be, I would say, in a way, the face for Red Chillies VFX in the international scene. And we did kind of have very good meetings, but I mean, yeah, eventually I don't think so a lot of it kind of formulated.
I think all the things that you're saying, they're very fascinating to me because at some point in my life I wanted to get into the same industry. So don't you today miss that environment, Siddharth?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like even after moving to Canada, I wanted to kind of continue my association with the sort of
Hmm.
VFX and animation
But
industry.
it's remote. It's not the same thing.
Yeah, yeah. And no, but I actually did apply to quite a few VFX studios here. So
Okay.
like Double Negative and Method Studios and a couple of others as well. And some of them, funny enough, like were also based in Montreal. So I
Hmm.
was of the opinion that okay, like it's maybe like just some manifestation that okay, like my exposure to Canada began in Montreal and maybe I would end up in Montreal.
Yeah, tell us more about that. Tell us about the time that you came.
Yeah, so actually, again, then going back to the Red Chillies time. So in June of 2016 is when we had this event in Montreal called Effects MTL, which is like short for Montreal.
Yeah.
And there we were basically there as speakers and presenting like the VFX making of fan, and sharing like stage with the likes of the makers of Deadpool, the makers of Pirates of the Caribbean 4,
Hmm.
and
Wow.
quite a few other like big movies that had released that time. And we were the only studio from Asia to be there, so it was
Hmm.
definitely a proud moment for all of us. And yeah, I mean, so while I was there, I think it was a week long event, probably like 3 days of events and then 2 days of like business meetings. But I used to get the evenings to myself. So I used to step out, meet a few friends who had actually moved to Montreal as well.
Okay.
So connected with them, sort of understood like what is their life like, how are they sort of adapting to this new country, new city.
Yeah.
And everything like felt very organic to me. Like, I mean, people were very warm. The work culture was amazing. Like everyone was very respectful of your time. Like I never
Yeah.
saw a fact that somebody was late for a meeting or
Yeah.
even expected that you are on time as well. And which is of course like you can't work on Indian standard time here. But
Good one. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it was just that couple of I mean, yeah, I would say the 2 or 3 evenings that I really got to spend some alone time. I would say that kind of got me thinking in terms of, okay, like what would life look like if I move here, sort of,
Hmm.
that sort of deep question that you sometimes get into. And yeah, so next thing you know, I went back, like I did not even like inform my folks or anything. I just sort of signed up for the IELTS, and
Okay.
once I cleared the IELTS, that's when I kind of opened up to dad, saying that, hey, like I think this could be an interesting proposition, like of moving to Canada and sort of figuring things out and things. So I mean, yeah, they were very supportive. They were like, yeah, I mean, if it works out, go for it, and we'll figure things out once you get there. And
Hmm.
funny enough, like 7 months down the line, we were already there. So then it came to be that, okay, like I started reaching out to a few of my connections here, understanding like how did they adapt and stuff. And of course, I heard some sort of horror stories in a way as well. Like, I mean, horror more so because not that you wouldn't expect it, but it's just that you personally wouldn't have sort of wanted to experience it in a way, like
Hmm.
in terms of coming to a new country, starting afresh, like not getting an opportunity in the field of your expertise, of a field that you have invested, like I would say 5, 7, 10 years even
Hmm.
sometimes, and kind of really kind of grown to become like a subject matter expert there. But then on hindsight, you feel that, okay, like if you are really coming to a new country and then trying to adapt to its culture, work style, all of that
Yeah.
stuff, the expectation is that the learning curve would be there. So, and that is the reason why most organizations prefer, like, to again bring up that sort of terminology of Canadian experience when you are
Yeah.
sort of trying for opportunities. But I would say, like, more and more organizations are evolving towards, like, when they say Canadian experience, it's not per se that you have to have worked in a Canadian organization, but more so that you understand that even the person who is probably like helping clean the floors or like do stuff in the
Yeah.
office is going to be sitting at the same table with you and having lunch with you. And
Absolutely.
you have to be respectful of that. You have to be kind of, and there could be a time where even the CEO of the organization is sort of making a coffee and like handing it out to you, like, and that
100%.
happens, like that happened to me, and I was like a little taken aback. But yeah, I mean, because, and then everybody is on a first name basis here. There are no sirs, there are no madams. And additionally, I would say, even the fact that there's like the mere acknowledgement of your existence, right? Like, so
Mm.
it's like even
I
when you're
love
going
that.
out for a
Yeah.
walk, you're in the elevator, I mean, even a stranger will be like smiling, asking you like, how's your day been, what, like I mean, yeah, just that kind of acknowledgement of your existence almost makes you feel that, man, like, why didn't this happen like when I was maybe 12 or 13 and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, those sort of experiences really kind of made me feel that, okay, like, yeah, I mean, I made the right choice. But yeah, going back to that discussion of when I was having those conversations, I figured out, okay, like, it's not entirely impossible to kind of land in Canada with a job or with an opportunity and stuff.
Yeah.
So I started kind of sending out feelers to some folks that I knew in the tech world specifically, because I would say technology is something that sort of overlaps regardless of geographies and regardless of kind of domain. And so I was reaching out to folks at Dolby, Adobe, Autodesk, Nvidia, AMD, all of these companies. And then, funny enough, like, AMD worked out. And I would kind of also like go back to a small incident. So while
Hmm.
we did launch the graphic slate, I kind of did a complete blowout story on like the making of Bahubali, which was like a massive movie at that point in time.
Yeah.
And so I did like a cover story on the VFX making. I did a story on the production design, on sound design, and also like the what do you say, the catalyst that led to the creation of Bahubali, which was
Okay.
actually Rajamouli's fascination with Amar Chitrakatha. Like, he was so fascinated
Mm.
with that fantasy world that he wanted to almost create one. And that's when, like, the writer of the story is actually his father. So he sort of floated that idea with his father, and they kind of built out that kind of world of Bahubali. And so yeah, I mean, that story that I did got picked up like as citations on Wikipedia, got quoted by some international sort of publications as well. And it that's and then cut to, I was at an event organized by AMD in Goa, where they were sort of launching a new product of their Radeon technology. And that's where Raja Koduri, who is or was their chief architect then, he also turned up there. And he happens to be like the first cousins of Rajamouli himself, and he was also a technical advisor on the movie. So while at an evening gathering, like I think he spotted me based on like the
Hmm.
badge that I was wearing, and then he called out like, "Hey, are you Siddharth from Animation Express?" I'm like, "Yeah." So and then we got talking, and then yeah, I mean, funny enough, like it was just that one like conversation. And
Hmm.
I mean, I guess it did leave a mark on both of us. And
Mm.
like he actually became the reason why like my journey into Canada became so seamless. Like, so he made an introduction to our sort of director of software at AMD in Markham, the Markham office.
Hmm.
And so he set up a Skype meeting with me. We did an interview, and then he spoke about like, okay, there could be a possible opportunity of like product marketing for a new product launch that we are doing sometime in December end and January. So like, would love to have you as part of that sort of project. And yeah, that's how the role came to be. It was like a 3-month contract, and I was like, okay, at least I have something to get started with. And
Yeah, yeah.
that's how I then planned my trip. And so this happened in August, and I told him like, okay, give me just a month to wrap up everything, and I'll come in by September. So 7th of September is when I landed, which was a Thursday. 8th, 9th, 10th, I just got to kind of explore the city, be settled. And then 11th onwards, I was at the job.
Tell us about your first day. What was going on in your mind?
So again, like me being me, like I wanted to of course make a good impression, good first impression. So I was all like suited and booted on day one. And I reached up to the office, and of course like Sasa, who was my manager and the director of software, like he came down to receive me. And then he, I mean, he was very kind. Like he like again took me to the cafeteria, got me coffee and all that. And then before
Mm.
seating me at my desk, he was like, you can be a lot more casual, like coming in tomorrow." So yeah, I mean, that was fun. And yeah, I would say like the first day of job, of course, like it was almost like entering an unknown, because okay, I have content, I have a sort of understanding of the gaming industry and how like this works within that space. But yeah, I mean, just not really knowing what this could lead into and what I was exposed to, like, was sort of a scary factor. But I would say like a month into the role, I was like, okay, like I know that what I'm doing now may not be something that I want to continue doing, but at
Mhm.
least it's a good start.
I just want to touch base on the point where you were talking about, cultural differences in India and in Canada, where despite the role, despite the position, everybody's sitting on the same table and eating together. Tell me about the time in Singapore. How was it there in Singapore? If you can share something from that time.
Yeah, I mean, completely opposite, honestly, because
Mhm.
Singapore is known to be multicultural, of course,
Mhm.
and at the same point in time, Tamil is actually a national language. So, and my mother tongue is Tamil, but the
Mhm.
the thing is like there is that sort of superiority sort of feeling that
Mm.
the locals have in terms of the Chinese, and even to an extent the sort of Malay speaking audience, which is like
Okay.
Malaysians but might have sort of immigrated to Singapore, or maybe like first or second generations. But yeah, I mean, in school it was hard. Like it was
Mm.
hard to kind of make friends in terms of especially the Chinese community, I would say. But
Okay.
the Malay community were sort of more resonating with like our culture and our lifestyle and stuff. And like I used to get along very well with them. And so there was actually a game that we used to play, which is called Sepa Takro. So it is
Okay.
actually volleyball with your feet. uh,
Okay.
but it is a ball which is made of cane.
Okay. Interesting.
And so, I mean, yeah, you can use your head and you can use your foot, but you can't use your hands.
Hands. Okay.
So yeah, that used to be a fun game that you used to play like during lunchtime and stuff. And then of course, like, you had the Indian community as well. And another interesting fact, so Tamil being, of course, a national language, they used to have classes for Mandarin, which is like the preferred language there, Malay and Tamil in the school that you are studying in itself, where they had like language classes.
Mm-hmm.
But since, of course, like, I had not, of course, been very fluent in Tamil or even like written or read Tamil earlier, so we used to go to a special Hindi school, and we
Okay.
used which also had Punjabi.
Mm-hmm.
So Hindi and Punjabi used to happen on Sundays,
Interesting.
and that was for like 4 hours. So 4 hours of classes on Sunday. So that was again like a fun thing, right? So you get to kind of get exposed to a completely like Indian community. Like, you'll have folks always coming up in like kurta and pajama, so you almost feel like home. So
Okay.
yeah, I mean, that was again like a fun experience. So I would say it was a mixed bag. Like in school, I would say it was definitely tough getting by, but otherwise, like, when you like are with neighbors or when you're on the road and stuff, I think things are pretty like easy going.
So let's just get back into your Canadian journey now. So tell me about a time, Siddharth, where you felt like you are at your lowest, because everybody on social media does share, their first car or their first house or their first job. But yes, things are changing. People are trying to being their authentic self. But I would like to ask you, tell me about the time where you were at your lowest, or how did you pull yourself out, or what was that motivating force for you?
Yeah. So the time was, I think, end of March, early April of 2020,
Okay.
or actually, let me go back, 2018. So
Hmm.
so it was maybe just like not even 1 year in, right? Like, it's like 6 7 months in, and that was when like I was even planning to kind of invest in a house.
Hmm.
And because, I mean, it's not very tough to save up like about 10 15 grand if you can like create a, sort of good credit score, and if you are
Hmm.
able to find something which is like in that 300,000 range, and like 10 15 grand as 5% down payment, so you could make it work. So I was in the process of actually looking for a home then, and everything was sort of planned, going well. And next thing I know, like, my sort of role at EchoWorks was sort of eliminated, because
Okay.
they were like, we didn't plan it right, or I don't know, like, they didn't sort of budget it right in a way. And
Hmm.
so I was, what, maybe 4 months into the role, and then the role got eliminated. So funny enough, okay, I mean, okay, role got eliminated, that's fine, but where do I sort of sustain the mortgage and get everything going and all that stuff, right? So that's when I would say was the lowest time, because I had to kind of go back to like the owner that I'd already put the down
Mm,
payment towards and stuff, to kind of argue about this fact, go through the law, get the lawyers involved, all of that stuff was more painful than anything, I would say, because, I mean, of course, that was the first time ever to have faced such an occasion of like a role being eliminated, or sort
yeah.
of not having an idea of what I'm doing the next day. And at the same point in time, I was at a high where I was like getting into buying a house for myself, and like
Mm,
planning like the future. So yeah, that was the lowest period, I would say, wherein like firstly I had to figure out like the career front, and then secondly I had to figure out like how to get out of this mess that I got into. But I mean, not a mess particularly, but like a, I would say, a beautiful thing that I had planned, but now it's a mess because of what happened. So yeah, that was definitely the lowest time. And then I sort of then took a break, went to India for a couple of months, completely realigned like what I want to do, and that's when I sort of positioned myself that, okay, I'm getting into like the world of SEO. And so
Mhm.
technically it's only after about exactly a year that I
Mhm.
pivoted completely into SEO from content. So because AMD was sort of doing bit of content, a bit of product marketing, a bit of like even communications to an extent, and
Mhm.
EchoWorks was very specific to like creating a lot of content, like white papers, case studies, webinars, all of that stuff. And both are very like diverse industries. Like one is into cybersecurity, one is into like semiconductors. And then yeah, I just recalibrated myself, took the sort of bet that okay, like SEO is where I want to be. And the reason I chose SEO is because after having worked both these roles, I could see and sense that the talent in digital marketing or SEO per se, specifically in North America, is more technical oriented. So they are generally like designers or developers who sort of upskilled to also take up SEO roles versus like folks in content who sort of pivoted into SEO. So that's where I found sort of my mojo, if you call it. And
Okay.
yeah, so 2018 October is when I made the pivot, and
Okay.
what we are in 2023 now,
Now, yeah.
February, and I'm working at probably the best role in my career, wherein I'm not just managing SEO, but I'm managing even like the paid function. I'm managing the web and sort of working very closely with the founder, CEO, and leadership in terms of really taking the organization to the next level.
Awesome. So I do know that you also founder of the Sid Organic Growth Consulting Incorporated, right? We'll talk more about that, but I just want to go back to the time we were talking about, buying a house, and it must be a very scary time that you don't have a job anymore and you have a house to pay. But tell me, like, what are the some of the things, or maybe like if you can share like 5 tips for anybody who is planning to buy a house, the very first house. What would you tell them?
Yeah, I would say first, of course, you need to figure out whether you want to buy a house or a condo, because that's, I think, a very big decision. Given like a house, I would say is better off if you are already planning a family or have a family, and also if you are a person who sort of enjoys like your private space in a way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And condos, I would say, are more for folks like me who are lazy, who, who don't want to do any of the external kind of management stuff. And then additionally, I've come from a sort of, what do you say, background and like upbringing where I've always been in apartments, so I can't
Mm.
think of myself living in what you call as bungalows in India.
Okay.
So that was like one, wherein you need to at least figure out like whether you want a condo or like a house. The second thing I would say is figure out like your financial status, right? So one is, of course, what is your affordability appetite, because that is where you need to sort of reach out to a mortgage broker and understand like, okay, this is what you're earning, this is what your savings are, and this is where like your credit score sort of lives.
Mm-hmm.
And then based on that, you need to figure out like what is your upper ceiling appetite in terms of what you can go after. Because
Okay.
being in the real estate in Canada, like you get to learn about like bid wars and all the other stuff that happens. So you need to be really well prepared to know that this is your upper ceiling and you can't go beyond that to sort of be safeguarded in a way.
Mm-hmm.
The next thing I would say is, of course, like given that it is sort of a regulated industry in a way, so you need to work with a sort of realtor as well in terms of just figuring out exactly what you want, right? So I would say have a want list and then have a need list. So the
Okay.
want list is, of course, something that you can't do without,
Mm-hmm.
and the need list is something that is a good to have. So
Okay.
let's say if you say that I want to have like a gym access, I want to have like a swimming pool access, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever it may be, but it could also fall into the needs criteria, because if your wants
Yeah.
are more about having a parking, having a locker, all of that stuff,
Mm.
And then additionally, if you are also wanting like a TTC access, wanting like a grocery next to you, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So those becomes part of your want list, and the other is like the need list, where it could be like you maybe, yeah, just need access to a park or need access to a school next by and stuff like that. And then I guess we are down to the last one. So
Yeah.
the last one being, I would say, think ahead, right? Like think that you are going to be buying this place at least for the next 5 years, because
Mm-hmm.
if you are someone who likes to like flips properties or like get into something but want to get into bigger sooner, like you would rather plan to buy that bigger place rather than like, because given the current market conditions, I would say like even predicting like the sort of growth of your investment and all of that stuff will be tricky. So I would say if you're investing in your primary residence, then you don't even have to think about the fact
Mm-hmm.
that whether it will appreciate or not, because you need to go with that mindset that this is like my place to be in the next 5 years or for the
Mm.
next 5 years.
Okay, I love the needs and wants point. I think that kind of really helps you to make a decision. So I love that. Thanks for sharing it. So Siddharth, like I mentioned, you are the founder of Sid Organic Growth Consulting Incorporated, and you are an SEO expert. So I have a few questions to ask you, just to like educate me and our listeners more about SEO. So tell me, what are some of the common SEO misconceptions that you often come across?
Yeah, so the most common one is like people sort of misunderstand what is SEO and SEM. So
Mm-hmm.
SEM is of course search engine marketing, and SEO is search engine optimization. And SEM is also sometimes called as either PPC, which is pay per click, or of course just called like paid search. But when you see like the search results of any search query that you type, generally you will see that it is front loaded with the ads which are actually paid for,
Hmm.
versus the ones that show up after maybe like the three or four results which are organic results.
Hmm.
So that is probably like one of the biggest misconceptions in terms of, hey, I want to show up like as the first result when somebody types a search term. So okay, like, but then you need to understand like how competitive that term is, whether it is a category term or whether it is more of like an informational intent term. So something like banking, right? So banking could be anything. Like it
Hmm.
could be somebody looking for a banking solution, it could be somebody who is trying to get into a career in banking, it
It's
could
very
be
broad.
exactly, it's very broad.
Yeah.
Whereas if somebody says like uh, closest bank near me, so that
Mm-hmm.
almost becomes like a sort of perimeter search, wherein like it will
Yeah.
probably like the first few results would be actually map locations, wherein
Yeah.
you will actually get to see a CIBC, a RBC, or whichever other bank is closer to you. And
It niche
so
downs to an area.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you can go further down into like five skills you need to be in banking. So that
Hmm.
almost becomes like a guide that you get in terms of like tips or like characters or like things that you need to know if you want to get into banking and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
everything is sort of understanding the intent of like the user, and then that's how like Google or any other search engine actually rewards like
Hmm.
the results based on the fact that which is the best sort of answer to that specific question. And
Hmm.
it keeps evolving, like no two people will see the same result. Like if you typing like best running shoes in Montreal versus me typing best running shoes in Toronto, both of
Yeah.
us will be seeing different results,
Hmm.
because
Absolutely.
it's dependent on, again, like it also considers your sort of affinity towards brands and things.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
I mean, search engines are always listening, so
Yeah.
yeah. So I
Yeah.
would say those are a few things. I wouldn't say misconceptions, but more so like in terms of just lack of education.
Okay. Next is, can you share like a success story about a client whose SEO improved like significantly under like your guidance or your help?
Yeah, I mean, so the current organization that I'm working with, Isera. So it is sort of I mean, it's a client and this relationship, but I'm also kind of more full time there in a way.
Hmm.
But I would say, yeah, I mean, just looking at the organic growth that we've seen over this 1 year of
Yeah.
that I've been affiliated with them. So we've seen the organic traffic value grow by almost 300%. We've
Oh
seen
wow.
the organic traffic grow month over month by 150%, and we are currently looking at almost a 150% growth in like the keywords that ranks on the domain as well. And then of course, like just taking up a lot of like the I would say the top three sort of places for very business specific terms, which are more inclined towards like buying a solution like us. And then I mean, one is this, right? So of course these are all like SEO stuff, but then eventually what I personally want to help like folks that I work with or brands that I work with is
Hmm.
revenue. Because eventually, if you're not profitable with any investment, it just doesn't make sense. So my promise is always like a return on spend of like 5x, if not more. And that is what I like end up doing. So if you were, let's say, earning like $1,000 earlier, like we will ensure that you are getting at to a that $5,000 mark by the end of 1 year. So
Hmm.
that's the sort of promise that you go with. And then of course work closely with everyone to ensure that all the recommendations and actions that you need to be taken for you to kind of be on that journey to on that growth path.
So how do you like compete, or how do you like stay up to date with the latest SEO trends or any algorithms? How do you do that?
Yeah, I would say like my source of information is LinkedIn. Like I kind of get connected and follow quite a few like industry peers in the
Hmm.
space who work in that same mindset, right? Because all of them are tied towards like working towards that revenue goal versus just occupying the first sort of place in like a search term.
Hmm.
Because eventually, like I would say, SEO has evolved. Like earlier, SEO used to only be about ranking a keyword to the top position, but
Hmm.
now SEO has almost become like probably the biggest contributor to any organization's bottom line. And that is why like even when we saw during the pandemic, or even now, like when we are on the brink of recession or probably like entering recession
Yeah.
in North America, like most organizations are now taking SEO and their organic sort of presence much more seriously.
Seriously, yeah.
They are investing in like doing a lot of more sort of branded efforts as well. Like folks are starting podcasts, they are doing like video content, they are trying to sort of even be on a lot of common forums. Because once, so there are two ways that you can kind of attract search traffic, right? One is the branded way and one is the non-branded way. So the non-branded search traffic is of course a lot of it comes from the organic sort of work that you're doing on the SEO side of things. But I would say even the branded traffic you get has some contribution from SEO. Because once, okay, like somebody searches for best like CRM solution, let's say,
Hmm.
they would probably see a list of like CRM solutions, and then like they might like register that name in their head, and then might go into doing a search like compare this versus this. And then that is where they see that okay, like the this solution probably has all the features that I'm looking for. But then they might like talk about like, can this solve these use cases? So use cases are very specific to like their business problems, and then they will probably narrow down to the right solution and probably just do a branded search of the domain that they are wanting to go to. So
Hmm.
it's almost like being like omnipresent in their entire search journey.
Yeah.
So being on like review listing sites, of course investing some aspect in ads, doing like email marketing campaigns, being on like the SEO blogs and sort of guide searches, and then eventually sort of course having a presence in like all the community forums and stuff as well.
I don't know this question would be right to ask. Are there like, because they're like every day algorithms are changing, but I just want to ask you, are there like any tips for creating like a high quality SEO friendly content?
In today's day and age, I think the only way that you can create high quality work is if you're very close to the customer, because
Mm.
eventually you need to like know your customer inside out, in terms
Mm-hmm.
of what are some of the search terms that like this individual might be looking for. And that is why you always create that ideal customer profile, right, which we call as
Mm-hmm.
ICP,
Yeah.
wherein like of course there is that talk of creating like different personas and stuff, but then like you already have some customers, so why not just profile them in terms of, so how would a head of customer service be thinking different than a head of customer support? Because it could be that they have some overlapping sort of engagements, but
Yeah.
eventually support is more, I would say, technically oriented, whereas service is more after sale. So
Mm-hmm.
it's
Yeah.
more about like servicing like the needs, whereas
Mm-hmm.
support is more about like resolving problems. So
Mm-hmm.
and that is where you sort of even differentiate the nuances between these two very sort of, I would say, interlocked kind of roles.
Okay. Perfect. So finally, I know, do you know that you also provide mentorship? So how can people connect with you? Tell us about that. If anybody wants to get into this role.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I generally also have like a Calendly link on my LinkedIn. I've currently like deactivated because I'm traveling, but
Okay.
yeah. Otherwise, like there's ADP list that I'm on as a mentor, and so I interact with like marketers and like even like designers who are wanting to kind of upskill and get into like a managerial role, or probably looking at making a parallel shift in their careers. So, and it's a global platform, so I speak with individuals from UK, from Jamaica, from India, from Singapore, all places. So that's one place that you can definitely find me. And the other platform is growth mentor, so that's more so for like the SaaS sort of industry, and you will find a lot of founders, startup founders there, who are looking for like quick hacks in terms of how they could probably see like explosive growth for their product or service that they're working on. And so yeah, I get to speak to quite a few like startup founders there, and guide them there.
Perfect. So, to all my listeners, all the links can be found in the show notes. So, start now. We're in the final segment of the podcast. I call it Beneath the Accent. So, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. You can answer them in one word or a sentence or howsoever you feel like. The idea is just to know more about Siddharth. So, our first question is, what is that one habit you adopted that has changed your life?
I would say the habit of logging into work 30 minutes earlier, like
Okay.
regardless of whenever I start my day, because it helps me really plan my day well, and kind of be on top of any sort of pending items, as well as sort of ensure that all the open items for the day are sort of prioritized, and that way it kind of helps me stay on top of things always. Like I never
Mm.
drop a ball on anything so far.
Okay. Amazing. So, is there something you recently bought and you now regret?
I'm like thrifty, so
Okay.
I don't really spend on something that I don't need. So it's
Okay.
always been something that I have desired, and I purchase it.
So, what is the most expensive thing you own?
I would say probably a leather jacket, which is, I would say, about $700.
Okay.
Yeah,
What brand is that?
maybe Burberry.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what's the most expensive thing you would like to own?
I think I've already invested in it, which is like my investment house. So that's going to be coming up for possession in 2026. So
Okay.
yeah, I think I'm really looking forward to kind of starting afresh in Canada again, like and kind of going through that moving journey, and uh,
Mm.
just yeah, getting into that new place, because it's an amazing location as well. Like it's
Oh
on
wow.
Danforth and Main Street.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So, what are the next three things on your bucket list?
Uh, so definitely either write or direct a movie, like a feature film that kind of has, uh, I mean, international presence at least.
Okay.
Uh, One more item on the bucket list is definitely, I mean, exploring and traveling a lot more countries, and more so on vacation time rather than like work time. And probably the third thing would be, yeah, exactly what I've always had it on my list is like getting to financial independence, probably between anytime between 40 and 45.
So, who's your go to person?
My go-to person,
Yeah.
generally my dad for anything professional, and generally my mom for anything personal.
Okay. So, since you have worked you have worked around many, filmmakers, and you have sort of like been in the same industry. So, are there like any movies or any particular movie that you like to watch over and over again?
Oh yeah, Rocket Singh is one. Like I,
Okay.
I am fascinated with that character, and also just the heart of the story, like and what goes behind it. The other movie I really enjoy is Udan, which
Okay.
is again like located in Jamshedpur, and
Hmm.
I would say one of
Yeah.
probably the most brilliant performances by Ronit Roy.
Don't it's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say the third movie would probably be Wake Up Sid, which is again very similar to sort of my just, I would say, discovery of the journalism and content sort of journey, wherein like Sid, of course, in his world discovers photography
Yeah.
as like his passion, and like for me, I would say it was like the content journey that became like my story.
So, if you could have one superpower, what would it be?
I would say teleporting, like just being able to kind of think of a place I want to be and kind of just be there in a flash. So, and that way I can always sort of spend more time with folks that I enjoy time spending time with.
It's funny enough, somebody just asked me this question recently, and I said the same answer: teleporting. I would love to do that as well.
Amazing.
So, if you could create one law, Siddharth, that everybody has to follow, what would it be?
I would just say spreading happiness. Like,
Hmm.
I mean, just bring that moment of joy for one person in your daily life. Like, and it could be someone known, it could be someone unknown, but don't end your day without bringing a smile to someone else's face.
Hmm. Love that. So, describe Canada in one word or a sentence.
Canada is, I think, ever giving. Like, there's
Mhm.
no time that you feel that there's any dearth of something here. Like,
Hmm.
it's just ever giving in terms of all facets of life.
Love that. So, finally, if you could leave me with a piece of advice, what would it be?
Advice is a big word, but yeah, I would say stay passionate to whatever you are passionate about, and never give up on your dreams.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Siddharth, once again for being on the podcast and adding value to my listeners. Thank you.
Thank you, Guraziz. This was amazing.
Hey, listener, thank you for making it to the end. I highly, highly appreciate you listening the podcast. Subscribe to the podcast if you haven't as yet, and please share with your friends or anybody you think would like it. And like I always say, we encourage you to follow your heart, but also us on Instagram. The handle is mythicaccent. You can also leave us a review or write to us at hello@mythicaccent.com. So stay tuned and let's continue knowing each other beneath the accent.